Hi, everybody, and welcome to another WeatherCast USA QuickCast. This piece was included in the forecast discussion that we recently just posted, but I decided to pull this out because I think it deserves a little bit of attention on its own related to the remnants of 93L. As of recording this, there is nothing currently listed on the National Hurricane Center outlook for the remnants of 93L, but I think it is worth paying attention to as the models over the last 24 to 36 hours have started to hone in on that moisture circulating the high pressure and then returning to the Gulf around the middle of next week. So the following gets into that a little more detailed, as well as looks at some broad range outlooks for the rest of the continental US going into next week and late July. Looking at the vorticity in the atmosphere, this is just another way to see some of those jet streams, slightly some of those more mesoscale features. We can see sometimes clusters of thunderstorms, small areas of low pressure with this product here. And you can see there is some signs of that the next couple days moving through here into Canada. We can see, again, this reinforces the idea of that severe weather in Canada, especially in Quebec and Eastern Ontario later this afternoon. Closer to that low, that's going to be an all hazards threat. And we can see that more zonal flow across the northern tier of the country with that next little disturbance kicking off that severe weather late in the afternoon and into the evening in Montana and the Dakotas. We can also see that remnants of 93L, that vorticity down here into southern and central parts of Louisiana, that's going to persist the next 24 to 48 hours before that somewhat dissipates, and then that remnant moisture just kind of gets pulled up through the Mississippi Valley. Putting into motion, we can see a couple interesting things. We can see some patterns of some convective systems across the middle of the country, especially that northern parts of the plains into that northern parts of the Midwest. Potentially by Tuesday, could be talking about some severe activity. If this does verify, we could be talking about some severe weather again in parts of Minnesota and to Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. We can also see some interesting things developing. There are a couple models that take that remnant moisture of 93L and basically spin it around the high pressure that's going to be building here into the southern and central part of the US. And we can see a little bit of that hinted here in this model run here by Tuesday down into southern parts, coastal parts of Georgia and South Carolina, as well as a little bit of energy back into the Florida Peninsula that could increase the rain and storm chances, especially it looks like from the I-4 corridor north. So let's take a look at that in just a little bit more detail and zoom in here on the southeast US. Again, we can see the current look of 93L coming ashore here into southeast Louisiana. We'll see it get pulled up and basically dissipate here into Louisiana, extreme eastern Texas. You can see it getting pulled through the Mississippi Valley. And as that high pressure builds on the backside of that high, you can see that refocused area of potential spin with an enhanced area of precipitation coming back into that areas again of coastal Georgia, coastal South Carolina, into northeast Florida by around Tuesday, especially early on Tuesday. And then we can see that does traverse across the Florida Peninsula. And interestingly, this is not the only model that's shown this or model run. Models started to pick up on this late yesterday. We can see a little more spin here in the northeastern part of the Gulf. So that is going to be something to keep our eye on. Like 93L, depending on where that low crosses into the Gulf, if it stays more to the north or if it goes more into the north central Gulf, that is going to dictate a lot of the development potential if we do see another enhanced area of low to mid-level spin here into the week next week. Like 93L, if it stays along the northern part of the Gulf Coast, that's going to be a lot more land interaction, a lot less time over those warm Gulf waters, and reduced development chances. If it goes off more of central Florida and into the north central Gulf, that could lead to more development potential with more time over those open, very warm waters. This time of year, the waters in the Gulf are into the mid to upper 80s across this area, so there is a lot of fuel for a tropical system. Again, this model is early, and the models don't really pick up on a lot of intensity right now, but anything can happen once a system gets into the Gulf, especially this time of year. So for now, it's just something to keep our eye on, be weather aware, and definitely check back for any updates as we get closer to the middle of next week. But this model does take that further out. It takes it across, again, parts of the north central Gulf, potentially impacting parts of Louisiana with another round of tropical moisture. So this is, no matter what in development, if this does verify as a model and we see a low pressure out here in the Gulf, it is going to increase those moisture and rain chances from the Florida Panhandle across the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast and into southern and southeast parts of Louisiana. Back to our wider picture of the continental US. Again, you can see that feature on the wide lower 48 look down here into the eastern part of the Gulf. So we will keep our eye on that. And we can see that next dip in the jet stream likely bringing some more severe weather into parts of Montana, the Dakotas, possibly Wyoming and Minnesota by the middle of next week. And potentially some more severe weather with another little dip over here into parts of the extreme parts of the Northeast, as well as eastern parts of Canada. One thing I think this model shows a pretty good job is the systems don't really dig down into the south that much, but there will be some remnant boundaries of degraded fronts as well as boundaries from overnight convection that could spark some storms on that northern side of the high pressure, especially across that I-80 corridor in the Midwest. Potentially some of that energy slips down into parts of the mid-Atlantic, so we could get a couple rounds of storms there. But we can see again the broad area of stretched out high pressure from the south and the mid-Mississippi Valley. And then again, as we get into later parts of July, working to the west. And that will be one caveat to the moisture and the heat in Texas. Any system that does develop in the Gulf, and this hints at it here, may push a little bit more westerly than 93L. So if something does develop, it may take more of a western track across that whole northern part of the Gulf Coast, grazing the Florida Panhandle, coastal Mississippi and Alabama, and the southern part of Louisiana. Potentially something to keep our eye on. There could be a little bit of an enhanced threat for some tropical moisture coming into the Texas Gulf Coast later into next week. Whether that's a system or not, that remains to be seen, but at least it could increase some tropical moisture into southern Texas. And that could also enhance some flood potential into Texas late into next week. And then skipping ahead, this model also shows that building heat into the Four Corners and the Southwest with a large ridge building across the West Coast, pushing that northwest flow. Again, more severe weather chances across the northern tier of the country, and then potentially also into the Northeast by late in July and early into August. So thanks for joining us on this bit of an update quick cast here on WeatherCast USA. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click that bell icon to get notifications when we go live, when we post new forecast videos, and also when we post our daily weather briefs. Also, don't forget to like and follow us on our other social medias at WXCastUSA on Twitter and Facebook.